How to reach C-level decision makers. So my name is Graham Smith. I'm the marketing director for SCI. A little bit about me. I've got 30 years experience in B2B marketing. I'm a member of the Chartered Institute of Marketing, and I've also been elected to the Telemarketing Council at the DMA. A little bit about SCI for those of you that don't know us. We were established in 2002. We started life as a B2B telemarketing agency, but we've grown to become what we believe to be a leading sales acceleration company. The voice marketing and human interaction that we do is now supported by other online and offline marketing tools. So this webinar is all about how to reach C-level decision makers. It's a challenge that affects many companies, judging by the number of attendees. There have been a number of changes in C-level contact, and I think it's worth taking a look at some of the background research in order to set the scene. So here's some research for you guys to digest. According to Miller Hyman, 4 out of 5 sales have buying teams with at least 4 people. 1 in 10 sales have buying teams with 10 plus people. And when you combine those sort of figures with some stats from CEB, which show that 57% of the buyer journey has been completed before they actually make contact with you, we can see that this perhaps means that the buyers are better informed. C-level buyers are better informed, and they're able to make quicker decisions because they're engaging with you later in the process. And that really does impact the way in which C-level the way in which we engage with C-level. The suspect to sales process, well, that's pretty much the same as it's always been, and you can see here a diagram that we're going to be referring to later on in the webinar quite a lot. So suspect through to sale. But what's changed for us is information, collateral, route and metrics. And these are the 4 areas that we're going to be examining in this webinar. But to better understand the triggers in the buying process, and indeed when to shoot, it's useful to always look at the buyer's view of the journey. So in blue you can see the marketing department or sales department's view of the process. For us, a suspect is, for the buyer in red, a consideration. And for us, a sale is for them a purchase. And we're going to, you can take a look at this diagram and see that at each stage the buyer is asking themselves different questions. So at the investigate stage, where we believe they would be a prospect, they're saying, what can satisfy my need? It's what can satisfy my need. By the time they get to a lead stage and they start to evaluate, then they're asking the question, who offers the best option? So those sort of changes affect the way in which we engage with C-level buyers. And knowing where the buyer is in the process enables you to deliver a more relevant message and content. And perhaps this is nowhere more important than when you're dealing with C-level. Your elevator pitch needs to be concise, informative, relevant and persuasive. So let's take a look at the first area, that's information. So it's important to gather as much information as possible about your C-level target, including their buying team and indeed the company or product. You can't afford to have an uninformed conversation with senior decision makers. So we believe there's 3 valuable sources of information, search engines, LinkedIn, and then your own telemarketing activity. Combining all 3 gives you what we believe to be a single prospect profile. and enables you to deliver a more relevant and therefore persuasive message. So LinkedIn will give you information about the individual. Search engines are going to highlight company news and competitors, but it's your own telemarketing activity that is perhaps the most revealing. Telemarketing research, so that's talking with junior executives and department managers, it's likely to give you information that has not yet been published. So it's information that is not in the public domain, and can also help you understand the dynamics of the buying team. This should prepare you for your C-level conversation and means you don't waste time fact-finding during your call with executives on the board. Another part of the information phase is to understand the typical characteristics of a senior decision maker. Unfortunately, we don't have time to go into all of that during this webinar, but they are listed in a white paper we produced. The white paper is available for download from our website on our knowledge section, so that's scisalesgroup.com/knowledge, and that includes the typical characteristics of a C-level executive. So early on, I'd like to get you guys involved. I'd like you to help me with a poll question. The poll question is, what percentage of your telemarketing calls are aimed at C-level? So what percentage of your telemarketing calls are aimed at C-level? You should see a poll question pop up on your screen now. If I could ask you to give us your best estimate. You may not have actually analysed these figures, so a good educated guess will be fine. And there's 5 possible answers. One is that 1 to 25% of telemarketing calls are aimed at C-level, 26 to 50, 51 to 75, 76 to 100, and then don't know. Don't know is an equally valid answer. So if I can ask you to get involved and answer that poll question. And I'll combine this with figures that we've had from previous webinars. I'll just give you a moment. So again, what percentage of your telemarketing calls are aimed at C-level? Okay. Yes, it seems as though you guys are pretty typical of previous webinars that we've had. There seems to be a split at either end of the spectrum. For some of you, the volume of calls aimed at C-level is relatively low, but for others it can be anything from 76 to 100%, in which case obviously this webinar is hopefully going to be of interest and quite useful. So thanks for getting involved in that poll and doing it so quickly. So if we now move on to the next area, which is to take a look at collateral. So here again we have the suspect to sale process, the same one that we looked at earlier, but with a little bit more detail. So collateral is all that online and offline material that you need to support your proposition. It's more than content marketing. It's more than the blogs and white papers and webinars. It includes company brochures, even free samples or free trials. And it's important to deliver material and information at the right stage in the process. So sending a product sheet at the prospect stage is too early and could be disregarded. By contrast, sending a white paper at the opportunity stage may be seen as irrelevant, Or even worse, the decision maker might decide to reinvestigate and go back to the prospect stage. So again, I'd like to get you guys involved. This is the second of 3 questions I'll be posing during the course of the webinar. And the second question has to do with content. So do you produce content relevant for each stage of the suspect to sale process? So you've got 3 possible answers. Yes, you do produce content for each stage. No, you don't. And then don't know. Again, don't know is an equally valid answer. So do you produce content for each stage of the suspect to sale process? Give you a few more minutes. Okay. Thanks for answering that one so quickly. Again, you guys seem to be mirroring what we've seen in previous webinars. It seems that between 60 to 75% of you produce content for each of these stages, which is quite heartwarming. For those of you that don't, I would recommend that you review that. You will get value from producing content for each stage, and hopefully we'll be able to outline exactly what sort of content is right for each stage. So as well as the timing of delivery, you need to also consider the design and information provided in each piece of collateral. So for example, a white paper should be neutral in tone because the reader will be asking what can satisfy my need. It's way too early for them to be discussing the who. As a result, the design needs to be neutral, so limited use of your logo and no obvious or overt sales pitch. A problem often encountered by brands in new markets is that senior executives may be reluctant to take their calls. They're new brands, new markets. Good content can help position unknown brands as experts with C-levels, which obviously makes subsequent sales calls a lot easier. The next question that we often get asked is, okay, that's great, but what type of information do C-level executives find useful? Well, we've done a bit of research on the subject. And here's the results. So we asked 200 senior executives, what content do you find most useful? And you can see that way ahead is e-newsletters, which I must admit did surprise us. But I also want to highlight that further back down the chart, there's white papers. And if you think about it logically, white papers, as we've shown in our suspect to sale chart, white papers are digested at the prospect stage, and that's before senior management get fully involved. We'll talk more about that in the next section. So delivering relevant content to them at the right time is vital. I also want to note that the internet and Web 2.0 means that buyers have a better product knowledge than ever before. It's relatively easy for them to Google your company or Google your product. So make sure you tell them something that they don't already know, because they're actually quite well informed. We found that original research about their market sector can really open doors. So if you're targeting the finance sector, try and do some original research about finance. If you're targeting the IT tech sector, same again. Original research about their particular market really can open doors. Next area for us to look at is route. So here we are again with the suspect sale process. Again, we're adding another layer, a little bit more detail onto it. SCI believe there are now two entry points on the suspect to sale journey. The first is when a C-level exec decides the company has a need or want. So for example, a firm decides it needs to find better laptops for its sales execs. So in this scenario, the company's buying team will enter at the suspect stage. Now we call this a proactive search. But what if the company doesn't know of a product's existence? New innovations and disruptive technology are constantly entering the marketplace, and they may not yet be visible on search engines. So again, as an example, you might get a sales call announcing the launch of a new technology that reduces energy bills by 50%. You weren't actively looking to reduce your energy bills. You didn't even know of the existence of this technology. So we would call that a reactive find. Now on a reactive find, buyers don't go through the consider or investigate stages because there may not be a comparable product. For us, they move straight to the lead stage. So it's important to recognise that there are many routes to a sale or purchase. And your marketing, so all that collateral and content, needs to accommodate every path. You'll notice in the diagram that we've divided the buying team into three sectors. So junior, intermediate, and higher management. Higher management obviously being the C-level guys. And the stage at which they become involved with the buying process may well depend on their seniority. Now this can benefit your sales team because talking with junior and intermediate executives gives them the opportunity to gather that all-important sales intelligence, as well as, quite frankly, practice their elevator pitch before they engage with higher management. If you go straight to C-level without doing your homework, you will fail. And the problem is that their gatekeeper will ensure you don't get a second chance. So now let's take a look at a typical org chart. First thing to say is not all buying decisions are made at C-level. There is a hierarchy of support executives, each with budget responsibility. So do your homework and connect with the right person. In some instances, it can take up to 3 to 6 months to have a conversation at C-level. So it's frustrating to find the purchasing decision is actually further down the chain of command. For us, working ground level up can be more effective than top level down. And we'll go into that in a little bit more detail later in this webinar. But it's also important to note that you don't want to waste time with junior executives who perhaps overinflate their purchasing power. And this is where rigorous BANT qualification kicks in. It's essential. That's why talking with other executives in the buying team can often reveal where the real power lies. On the journey to the boardroom, you will inevitably encounter gatekeepers. There is a skill in getting past these guardians of C-level, and there have been many books written on the subject. We don't have time again in this webinar to go through all the methods that we use. However, there is a list of top 10 tips in our white paper. Again, that is available from our website. It's titled A Plan for Reaching C-Level Decision Makers, scisalesgroup.com/knowledge. So I'm going to go through a 5-point plan for reaching C-level now. This is just before we get into the final stage, which is metrics. So this is our 5-point plan for reaching C-level. First of all, find the floor you need. Go gather as much information as possible before you begin your journey. Use the search engines, LinkedIn, and indeed, as I've highlighted, your own telemarketing research to build a single prospect profile. Know where you're heading. The journey should be ground floor up. I've already touched on this. Talk to everyone in the buying team, not just senior executives. The junior and intermediate managers can be a good source of that unpublished information. Practice your elevator pitch. So use those junior and intermediate contacts to fine-tune your sales pitch. That way, when you do arrive at C-level, you'll be well rehearsed and concise. Educate people as you travel up. Buyers have better product knowledge than perhaps ever before. You know, the internet, Web 2.0, makes it easy for them to do research on you. So tell them something they don't already know. And then finally, ensure you exit at the right level. C-level is not the only stop. As part of that bank qualification, make sure you know where the real purchasing power lies. It may well be the floor below C-level. That 5-point plan is available as an infographic, again from our website, scisalesgroup.com. Now we're going to take a look at metrics. So the web, including 2.0, has changed everything. We've already touched on the fact that 57% of the buyer's journey has been completed before they actually contact you. Yet conversely, in this digital age, human interaction remains important. Our own research shows that 68% of B2B sales involve some form of HI. That's either a phone call or a meeting. And look at those stats. The average order value with HI, £68,000. Without HI, it drops to just £1,000. So for those big purchasing decisions that involve C-level executives, you have to do more than just tweet or send an email. Telemarketing for us is part of the answer. But how many calls does it actually take to get an appointment with board level members? Truth is, it varies, and this is where again I'd like you guys to get involved. The final question is, on average, how many telemarketing calls do you need to make to C-level to get an opportunity? So on average, and again, you may not have these stats available, so it would be your educated guess. On average, how many calls does it take for you to get an opportunity at C-level? Again, I'll combine your feedback with feedback from previous webinars. Just give you guys a few more seconds to get involved and vote. You can see all of the available options: 1 to 30 calls, 31 to 60, 61 to 90, 91 to 120, and over 120. As I say, we find that the answer does vary from sector to sector and proposition to proposition. Okay, thanks everyone for getting involved. According to your feedback, 60% of you are saying that it takes 1 to 30 calls to get an opportunity at C-level. That varies from previous webinars that we've held on this subject, and actually contrasts slightly with our own research. So we found, as I already highlighted, that the figures do vary wildly, and you can see an example here. We analysed 29,000 calls. So it can be anything from 37 calls to get an opportunity for a company that's involved in industrial utility supply, all the way up to 254 for managed IT services. The average figure that we were able to come up with was 80. It does vary, as you can see, from sector to sector, but that's the average call. The average number of calls to get a single opportunity. But don't despair if those sort of figures scare you, because our research also indicates that higher management can actually be surprisingly receptive to the right type of calls. So this chart shows that they are less likely to reject calls than their intermediate or junior managers. So 76% of junior executives rejected all of their last 3 sales calls. By contrast, only 47% of higher executives rejected all 3. Now, it may well be that as the key strategists for the business, C-level feel that they need to be informed of all available options, or it could be a much simpler explanation. Their calls are better screened by gatekeepers, so as a result, they know the call has already been filtered. Get past the gatekeeper, you stand a really good chance of having a conversation. So I said that we would examine information, collateral, route and metrics. But before I take a review, I just want to remind those of you that attended later that there is in the top right hand corner a question and answer button that if you'd like to start asking questions now, once I've finished the conclusion, I'll be able to answer as many of them as I possibly can. So top right hand corner, there's a question and answer button. But right now I'm going to take a brief moment to do a conclusion. So I said that I would look at 4 areas, first of which information. So use LinkedIn, search engines and your own telemarketing activity to build that single prospect profile of the C-suite. As far as collateral, deliver content and information at the right stage in that suspect to sale process. And for us, it's actually quite valuable to make sure that you tell them something they don't already know. So original research that you've commissioned can really open doors. Route, well, first find the floor you need. We believe the journey should be ground floor up. Practice your elevator pitch and make sure you educate people as you travel, revealing that original research that you've commissioned. And finally, exit at the right level. As we've highlighted, C-level is not the only stop. And then finally, metrics. Sure, the internet means that buyers are better informed, but we also have to appreciate that 68% of B2B sales involve some form of human interaction, either a phone call or a meeting. So that's the conclusion to this webinar. I like to try and keep these things to under 30 minutes. So I've got time now to answer a few of your questions. If you'd like to start asking questions, as I say, top right hand corner, and it's okay, just give you guys a few moments to start. Okay, one's come in, which is I've worked top level down. All right, I've worked top level down and found it works well. Ground floor up just wastes time. It's a point of view. It's not our experience. What I would say about working top level down, it's not just about the ones that you win. It's also about the C levels that you've not been able to contact. So just consider, what's the impact of being repeatedly stopped by the C-level gatekeeper? Eventually the gatekeeper is going to, rejecting your calls almost becomes a habit, or perhaps worse, your brand becomes known as a nuisance. So it's not just about the ones you win. It's not about the 10 out of every 100 that you win. It's the 90 out of every 100 where you haven't been able to win. So for us, working ground floor up enables you to connect with the right decision maker without troubling C-level and their gatekeepers. Not all decisions are made at boardroom level. I think you also have to appreciate that you really do these days need to be fully informed. So there's so much out-of-date information you can glean from the internet, and there's a wealth of obviously unpublished information that you can really only get from speaking to subordinates within the target organisation. C-level is not the place to start fact-finding. They expect you to be fully informed when you arrive. These guys are the big picture thinkers, so they may not even have answers to your perhaps detailed questions. Final point I would make on that is C-levels are collective. Imagine in your own work, a chief marketing officer doesn't get marketing budget without the approval of the chief finance officer. And if the budget includes investment in CRM, well, guess what? The chief information officer gets involved as well. So C-level is a collective, and you really need to engage with all members of that collective. And you can only do that realistically by working ground floor up. Okay, well, I think that's all we've got time for at the moment. If you do have any other questions, my email address is on screen, gsmith@scisalesgroup.com. Please do email me with any questions and I'll do my very best to reply. Alternatively, do take a look at our website, scisalesgroup.com/knowledge, to be able to download the white paper and infographic that I referred to earlier. Once again, thank you for joining me, and enjoy the rest of your evening.